All right, we are on a little bit late. Apologies for the little late start, but we're raring to go. How are you guys? How's everybody doing today? Michael, how's it going?
Doing great. Practicing my own sustainability efforts. I walked the golf course yesterday, so feeling good.
Good job. Andrew, how's your morning going or day going?
Not too bad at all, thank you.
Good, good. All right, let's kick into it. So, welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your optimization at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I am a commercial architect. I work in a team called Optics, and I focus specifically on telco customers across EMEA, helping them optimize their spend and anything to do with cloud financial management.
Hey, and I'm Michael Biddle. I've been on the optics team with Steph here for quite some time, actually transitioning to a new role here with Amazon as a financial architect, and I'll be continuing to co-host the show with Steph. And so stay tuned, but always happy to be on here.
Good, good. Yeah, I can't lose you. Don't leave. All right, so today we are talking sustainability, and I'm very excited about this conversation. I think sustainability in the cloud is very interesting, and it all links together with the cost optimization aspect. And we have Andrew Morrow with us. Andrew, welcome to the show. We'll jump in. Do you want to give a 1 minute intro into what you do at AWS and how you're related to sustainability?
Sure. So my name's Andrew Morrow. I'm a solutions architect, and my main role is working with media and entertainment customers in the UK. And that involves sort of all aspects of their architecture. I'm from a media background, so it's a pretty logical choice in that area. And then I've been involved with sustainability for the last couple of years. We have a technical community who are involved in developing sustainability content and best practices, and I've been involved with them through my media customers.
Nice. All right. So as always, we want to hear what's going on with you guys. So please feel free to add comments, questions in the chat. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them. And if you want to catch us afterwards, these are all uploaded to our YouTube channel, Keys to AWS Optimization. So you can see all of our shows across the last year. Oh, is that my Alexa? I think my Alexa just piped up. So let's get into it. So let's talk about sustainability. So Andrew, do you want to give a kind of definition of sustainability, especially with how it relates to the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. So we use, or Amazon AWS uses the sort of the UN definition of sustainability. So it's about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And there's sort of three main parts to that. We think of economical sustainability, social, and environmental, and we focus on the environmental part. So that's about looking at emissions, about looking at how much energy that we're consuming, about the waste and the energy that's produced, and it's about minimizing all of that. Running your operations in an efficient and effective way, and minimizing our impact as we go.
Amazing. And I know that you mentioned to me before about the shared responsibility model for sustainability. Would you want to talk through that? And I'll pop a link in for people to have a look in the chat.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you've been working with AWS for a while, you might have come across a shared responsibility model for security. We also have one for sustainability, and this sort of helps us to think about the sustainability of the cloud itself. So what AWS and Amazon can do to make the cloud the most efficient that it is, providing renewable energy, looking after things like energy efficiency inside our facilities, low carbon concrete, water stewardship even as part of that. And that's all things that Amazon and AWS do. And then there's also what you can do as users and customers of the AWS cloud. The way that you architect your applications and the way that you operate them actually makes quite a big difference to the amount of resources that you need to run it, and consequently the amount of energy and impact that creates.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's go into a bit more about so what was the water thing that you just mentioned? I realized I didn't know what that was, and I wanted to ask you.
Okay, so I mean, people often think, if you're running, sort of servers and racks and data centers in any sort of facility, you provide a lot of power to make them work. Servers also generate a lot of heat. So within the buildings, a lot of effort goes into designing cooling systems so that you can take that water away, or take the heat away, and they tend to use water as the sort of means of transporting the heat around the building. One of the things about data centers in the past is that they used a lot of water. So AWS has put a lot of time and innovation into, I mean, it sounds silly, but sort of recycling water and reusing the water rather than discharging it straight out, and also about the way that they operate the temperature levels inside the building, so that you don't, if it's cold, you can pull in cold air and you don't have to cool it. And you can also look at the temperature range that you run over, so that you're not not consuming energy if you don't need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. I never, because I feel like from a developer point of view or from kind of our point of view, I rarely think about the actual data centers and the impact that that's coming. I just think about the resources that I can utilize, so the EC2s, the Lambdas, whatever. But yeah, it's a whole other world in which you are dealing with the actual infrastructure itself, the buildings and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I recommend checking out that sustainability model, especially the image, to kind of showcase it. So in terms of sustainability and how customers can be better at being sustainable, what can they do? Where's like a really good place for customers to start, especially if they have a kind of be greener attitude?
Page. I mean, there's a couple of pages that you can look at for sort of sustainability in the cloud and AWS sustainability. I mean, the first thing is just to be aware of it. I think a lot of people are interested in sustainability or have heard about it, but they're not really sure. They're not really sure where to start. And if you look at the well-architected framework, you can look at the cost optimization pillar, and you can look at performance optimization, and this gives you a lot of things. There's a lot of overlap with what we're looking for in sustainability, but really the things that we're thinking about are are you doing things in the most efficient way? Can we make sure that you're using as little as you need? But it is much more broader than that. It's not really just about EC2 instances or anything like that. It extends into like several different areas, even into which region that you're running in.
Right.
There are certain regions where we have a much higher proportion of renewables, and we actually sort of cover any non-renewable energy that we provide in those areas. And as an organization, AWS and Amazon are up to something like 65% sustainable energy right across the whole of Amazon, not just AWS, but
Wow.
everything.
Everything.
And the goal is to be there by 2025 at 100%. And we're on a path to be there by 2025. The target's 2030, but we think we can do it early.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. And what are the 5 regions that there are 5 regions that are really optimized?
I knew you were going to ask me that. So Ireland and Frankfurt in Europe, Canada Central, Oregon, and actually the GovCloud US West. Those are the 5 greenest regions out of AWS.
Oh, brilliant. And I'll pop those in the chat. We'll just flash those off. So if you want to be super green, check out these regions. They're the ones to start with. And what's interesting is, and Bill, feel free to kind of weigh in on this bit, that the way you're describing being sustainable in the cloud, if we took out the kind of word sustainable, it sounds like any other conversation we've had on this show. And it's basically the same thing, like using as much as you need, that kind of language is being sustainable, is also being optimized in the cloud. Biddle, do you often get conversations with customers about being sustainable as well as being kind of optimized? Do they kind of go hand in hand, or do you talk to them in separate elements?
No, for sure. I mean, right, the key here, this show and sustainability is do more with less, right? And, that can bake down to something as much as like turning off idle servers that you don't need to reduce energy footprint, right? So those resources can be recycled back to other customers. But one that really comes to mind here that's really cool is like, how do you transform your product that you're taking out to consumers, right? And make that effectively more sustainable. And one example we'll put here in the chat is our AWS public sector team. We engaged with one of the local municipalities in Brazil to really digitally transform their document process. We partnered with one of our partner companies, OneDoc, and effectively by creating a document online validation system that leverages Aurora, ECS, container services, of course, Lambda, and Elastic Cache, we've really put together a solution where they're digitizing their documents that they had done in paper, and it's saving the environment roughly 150 trees each month and about 11.5 million liters of water. So
Oh my God.
that's kind of how we take this forward, right? Outside of just using less servers, and are we utilizing those machines properly? How do we help you transform your product? So Andrew, I don't know, you probably got some stories like that too, but no, we'd like to focus on that as well.
I mean, we see, if you look at some of the case studies, there's stories around looking at, cold chain, and it's not even necessarily, it doesn't appear obviously like a sustainability story, but if you think about food waste is massive. And what they've done is they've used data and analytics in the cloud, to dramatically reduce the amount of wastage, in cold chain. And there's, science and agriculture stories as well, where people are using, all the same cool stuff, IoT, data, sensors, all of these things, and then they're using that to transform the business. So it's not just, it's not just inside the IT part. It's actually, much bigger than that.
Yeah, definitely. I hadn't even considered how basic I am with this, is that I often still think of like, let's just turn the lights off and use that analogy of when you're not in the house, why would you have your TV on and things like that. But yeah, thinking about from the application level is amazing, that kind of transition from paper to technology. So going off of that kind of on a mini tangent, how should people start thinking about that? Because like I said, back when I was a customer, I didn't really think about it from that point of view. Are there key ways, Andrew, maybe that you see, especially within the sustainability group, that customers decide to make this kind of move into the sustainability world? Like, how should they get started in terms of thinking big across, not just being like, oh, I use EC2 Scheduler, but which we're talking about in a minute, but actually moving to be more sustainable, if that question makes any sense.
I mean, I think I know what you mean. I mean, in some cases, we see organizations where, it's become a strategic goal. They want to be sustainable and they're not really sure where to go next or how to really do it. In some cases, we see individual teams who really care about sustainability and they have a passion and they want to do something. And, both of those are sort of, great ways to get started. Once you've started to think about it, you then begin to look at, sort of how you host your applications, how you run them, even things like dev and test workloads. You'd be surprised how many people leave masses of dev and test workloads running when no one's using them. Most developers don't work 24 hours a day. Maybe some do. They shouldn't really be doing that. But in a lot of cases, there's just idle resources that people have kind of just left. And you can automate this and be really, really conscious and disciplined about pulling those down. And we've got a set of patterns that we tend to use across sort of different domains to think about data, that the operations side, across even where your users are, to sort of start to find optimizations. And it's like any kind of optimization. If you know what it is and you feel you've got some ownership, then you can start optimizing.
Well, Andrew, I mean, we have a pretty good mix of watchers on our channel here. We have some folks who haven't even migrated yet to the cloud and are kind of evaluating that process, and some that are already on the cloud with their journey. I think just to speak real quick to those who haven't moved to the cloud, your situation might be unique, right? But here's what I kind of want to get across is one way you can improve sustainability is just moving some workloads to the cloud. Like we have independent research from IDC, 451, PwC, and a lot of the other big consultant firms that show that moving to an AWS footprint can save about 3.6 times the amount of your carbon footprint that you would have with a traditional data center. A matter of fact, certain workloads of analyze have shown to take about 88% less of a water footprint when running in the cloud than compared to a traditional enterprise data center. So before we kind of start getting too far along in like, how do you want to architect in the cloud to be sustainable? Just moving to the cloud itself already kind of puts you along that path. So I don't know kind of customers you're dealing with, if that's in line with what you see.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, the first step is to make the move, and then optimize. And a lot of that comes from, higher utilization. Because in most on-prem environments, utilization is low. Most people are shocked when they look at how low the average utilization is across those environments. So in AWS cloud, it's, all the sort of service and infrastructure is much more highly utilized. Also, even if you look at, even down to processor level, it really depends on the environment as well. If you've got an efficient modern facility like the AWS facilities, where you've got custom components, you've even got sort of all kinds of efficiencies in the amount of in the way power is sort of moved around the facility. Your losses are less, and then you've got the renewables on top of that. So it's but utilization is one of the big advantages of cloud.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so let's bring it back to like how customers who are watching today, they want to go and be more sustainable in the cloud. So they want to get rid of some of that idle waste. what are some, we can run through them because we've mentioned some of them before, but what are some key things to be like, okay, let's go and what services are available to help you find waste and how to remove them? Where would you start with customers?
So the way that we generally start is looking at the sort of the compute patterns. What instance types are you running? How much are you using them? Even what processors are you using? So, I mean, you can use, of your CloudWatch metrics and things like Compute Optimizer to understand whether you're even Trusted Advisor to sort of understand whether you're really using those instances. And then you can think about, whether you could run those on, on an ARM-based instance, on Graviton 2, type instances, which are, between 2 and 3.5 times more efficient per watt, than other instance types. So if you can take advantage of those, that makes a big difference. One of the others is around, on the storage side. I don't know if you've seen S3 Storage Lens, you probably talked about it already, but, in terms of understanding what you're storing, whether you're really using it or whether it's, duplicated, it really helps you to understand, what you need to keep and what's duplication or unnecessary.
Another one on that topic, Andrew, is like if you're using Elastic MapReduce, which, I love EMR, great work use case for, Hadoop, high data analytics, processing. And so run the command is idle in your environment. See which of your EMR instances are idle or how long they're actually running their jobs. Like you'd be surprised. I bet you find a lot of EMR instances in your environment where they're running batch tasks that are running for like maybe 2 minutes or less. And we could look at potentially with your account team moving something like that to supporting more of like a serverless event-driven architecture, so those aren't running as idle for so long. That's one way to do this, if kind of like looking around corners. And then, of course, leveraging spot instances with that to couple in some price reductions with that. So I love looking for EMR and just simple command, run the is idle function and see what you get in your environment.
And to take it back a step up, with EMR, how would you go about running that function? Could you take us through like a little more basic on finding out what you're looking for?
Yeah, so one way you can run it is through the command line. We have also the AWS PowerShell function now that rolled out like last year on reInvent, I think. But so you get that, either run it back as a text or a JSON and look in there and see like which of your resources are in fact idle. And you can also match it back with tags you have in your environment, of course, right? So if you see is idle, yes, and it's back to Andrew's point earlier, it's dev and test. And then go back into the CloudWatch metrics and see, has it been this idle for like 2 weeks? I mean, that's a pretty good, strong use case that that you can couple that as a sustainability win, and you could also couple that as a cost savings win. But it's really the ones that I see come up most with that. It's not going to be your master or your core node with EMR that you're really concerned about with that. It's a lot of the stuff that's running like ancillary functions off of that, like your batch tasks that are just running different analytic pipelines intermittently throughout different points of a month.
Nice. I didn't know you could do that with EMR, so I'm going to start looking for that with my customers. That's awesome. That's really cool. So also in terms of some other things, so we've already mentioned Trusted Advisor, Compute Optimizer, CloudWatch metrics. If you want to know a bit more about some of those things, we've definitely spoken on the channel before. Check out our YouTube channel to see more of that. But there's other things like EC2 Instant Schedule, I think is a classic one, going back to Andrew's point about, again, the environment. If you are not running things 24/7, if you haven't got developers working 24/7, just turn things off at night. I think it's one of the most fundamental, like basic concepts of working in the cloud is turn things off at night. I don't know if you've ever had any pushback for people doing that. I've had a bit where we've had people that work at companies that are running kind of developers in different time zones. But do you see people kind of take up the instant scheduler quite a lot, or is there any reasons why they shouldn't use it?
I do see people using it. I sort of see, I think part of it is understanding what your users are going to do and understanding what your requirements are, being really clear on what you need to provide. In most cases, architects design for performance and for reliability. And most people like to exceed the requirements if you possibly can. And sometimes you don't need to. You can meet all your requirements with a little less than you currently have.
Yeah, I think on the instant scheduler topic, right? I mean, that's a good function to kind of see if stuff could potentially be turned off or paused during different points of the day, right? Based on usage cycles. But don't sleep either on downsizing that instance, right? I have seen more often than not a customer come in with like a, something like a R5D12 that really can change to like a C59 once we look at how much memory that machine's actually using. And so combined with the instant scheduler, like let's actually look and see are we having the right tool for the right job, right? Do you need a Ferrari for this workload, or can you use a Honda Civic, right? I mean, it's kind of the basic conundrum we're in all the time. So don't sleep on that.
That's a great analogy. The other thing I guess also to caveat is I always recommend Instant Scheduler. I think it's great. I have I wrote one I think before AWS had their own solution for it, and I'm always like, I had one too, but Amazon's one is probably better. But the other thing is just to be aware if you have things like RIs that you might want to check kind of how your instance is turning off at night, how that's going to affect your coverage. So just as a note, when you are talking about, and with all these things that we mentioned about turn things off and getting rid of things that are idle, just make sure that you check what's going on with the rest of your company before you start jumping in and doing things that you might regret later. So I wanted to cover one thing we haven't actually touched on yet, which was Proxy Metrics, which is something, Andrew, you brought up. So how we can kind of track sustainability and what metrics we could use to help look into that.
So one of the things that works really well is people feeling that they've got ownership. They've got some ownership of what they're doing in terms of sustainability, and they can see they can see a result. They've got something that they can track and something that they can work on optimizing. So Proxy Metrics is a thing that my colleague Stefan came up with, and basically it means that you've got a metric that you're looking at, but it's related to a unit of work. So for example, it's instances or terabytes per transaction or per user or per 1,000 journeys or things like this, so that you can see as your usage changes, as your business changes as well. So that if you're doing more work but your usage is only going up a little, this is good. But conversely, you can sort of see that if you're not seeing the changes that you expect, you can start to optimize those. But it's something that we just pull data out of your own own CloudWatch logs, and you can sort of see and relate that back to metrics. But it gives people ownership so that you can everyone can make a difference in sustainability, and it's important that everyone's got something that they can do and work on.
Yeah, and then we talked a bit about this in the session we had with Andy 2 weeks ago, last week, about how he had with automotive was they created kind of a metric about how much they wanted to spend per car, I think it was. And so like track down and then doing things like using Instant Scheduler, buying savings plans, getting rid of idle instances, they could bring down that unit cost and they could kind of track that. So yeah, definitely recommend having something, like you said, to aim for, I think is really valuable.
It's something you've got control of, something that you can track. I mean, there's
Yes.
a lot of variables, there's a lot of things in the world, but you can see what you're doing. And I've talked a lot about EC2 instances as well, but obviously, like the best EC2 instance is none at all. So if you can use serverless, event-driven computing, you only run it as you need it. You can extend this into your sort of ETL pipelines and everything else as well. You get all those benefits of the higher utilization and the AWS services. So it's serverless is definitely part of sustainability.
Yes.
Yeah, we tie it back to earlier about the products we can help customers change with their sustainability efforts. And we talked a little bit about, the document solution with the municipalities in Brazil. That one, I think, kind of is like in your face, straightforward, right? Let's digitize documents. Don't need a PhD at times to like look at that as an aspect, but like, how do you really want to go deeper within your organization? And I look at our manufacturing industries, our oil and gas, like, where the fact that you can get real-time data using AWS IoT, Greengrass, Control Tower, our edge locations, you can combine these in areas where you traditionally don't have the type of latency you need to get real-time information on your production. And it's like one such example, you look at GE, BP, what they're doing is they're leveraging these IoT sensors real-time with, Greengrass, SageMaker, and Control Tower to really set up their organization. And they're getting real-time data that's going to let them reduce the how much they're fracking, like the way they do it. Are they actually able to sense out more areas with less time? There's things like venting within the oil and gas industry where we don't want that, right? That's resources basically being exposed to the atmosphere. And through using these technologies, we're able to build architectures where we get faster indications that these situations are creeping up and the customer can respond to it quicker. And so one thing, you look at the GE case study we'll put in the chat here, is they were able to reduce their incident response time by about 100% on these applications, which is gigantic when you're talking about reducing the your resources. So just I challenge folks here, just kind of think about, like I said, different ways you can transform the product. Even if you're in finance, you can have a big impact in driving that forward.
Biddle, do you want to put that link in? Because I can't see it. What you don't know happens behind the screen. When Bill says we have a link, I have to look through all of my notes and find a link, which is always fun to do when you're squinting at a screen. What was I just going to touch on? So we've got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything? Oh, that was it. So I wanted to, there was a blog post that's one of the things that I found when I started researching. If you are kind of new into looking into some of the fundamentals around getting into sustainability in the cloud, I recommend checking out this. There's a 3-part blog post about sustainability, covers a lot of the things that we've talked about today, but in greater detail with some really useful links. Recommend checking that out and then kind of using those ideas and taking them to your customer, your customers, to the rest of your business, and kind of asking the questions to maybe more senior people, like, how are we tracking sustainability? What are we doing to be our bit to help? But are there any kind of parting things that you guys suggest people start to look at, or any good stories that you want to share before we finish?
I think, one of the nicest ones is actually from one of the customers that that we've worked with, and that went through the Proxy Metrics process, because they have big goals on sustainability. So a Swedish automotive group, which was Scania, they actually wrote a blog about the experience from their side. So it's nothing that we haven't written that one. That's entirely their view of the process and how that's helped them to sort of save money and sort of reduce the impact of their their IT. And there's sort of stories around sort of Carrier on the cold chain, where they've used data and analytics to get involved in that. And I do like the sort of the CropX things, where they're using sensors in the soil, so that instead of using satellite imagery to sort of determine what's going on in terms of the land use and the status of the crops, they've put sensors in the soil, and they're using IoT and analytics to do that.
Oh,
And
wow.
even though it's not public stories, if you look at in the media industry, there's a lot of organizations there taking a leadership position in sustainability. They're very visible. They're doing a lot of work. They've talked in other forums as well, and some of that's come from basically starting off doing basically an architecture review. It's like Well Architected, but it's an architecture review where we sort of take them through the principles, and they can start to make those reductions as well. They have lots of data, lots of storage. They're really interesting organizations to work with.
And if somebody wanted to get kind of involved with Amazon to help them be more sustainable, do we offer anything like that? I don't know.
We've certainly some talks out there where you can look at. We do architecture reviews as well. So if you're interested in an architecture review, that's certainly something that we can assist with.
Awesome. If you want to reach out about that, then please send us an email at costoptimization@amazon.com. All right, we'll be wrapping up there. One last link I wanted to share, if I've got it copied, is the climate pledge that AWS Amazon supports. So feel free to read that, get inspired, and think about how you could be one of these success stories when it comes to being sustainable in the cloud. So next week we are talking about data transfer. So get ready for that. I think that's going to be quite interesting. Biddle likes this subject, really. There's a lot of optimization to be found in there. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. Biddle, thanks as always. Have a good day, everyone, and see you next week.